Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Roy English Talk. Sometimes life doesn't change with noise and big decisions. It changes quietly, in the small choices no one sees. One kind thought, one extra effort, one small step. This video is your gentle reminder that transformation doesn't need to be loud to be real. Stay with me, and let's explore how quiet consistency can completely reshape your life. The myth of sudden change. We often believe change must be loud. That one morning we'll wake up and everything will be different. Our habits, our mindset, our life. Movies, books, and social media feed us this illusion of the turning point, the dramatic moment when everything clicks. But in real life, change rarely works that way. Most transformation doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly, like sunrise, slow, soft, and certain. Think about it. The stories we love, the hero's journey, the success story, the comeback, they usually show us the before and after, but skip the middle. That middle part, the messy, repetitive, unseen work, is where real change happens. Yet we overlook it because it's not glamorous. Nobody posts about the mornings they almost gave up but didn't. This belief in sudden change traps us. It makes us chase quick results, expecting to fix years of habits in a week. And when that doesn't happen, we think we've failed, when really we've just misunderstood how growth works. Real change isn't a lightning strike. It's erosion, steady, persistent, and unstoppable. Think about how water shapes rock. Drop by drop, moment by moment, it carves entire landscapes. That's how our daily choices shape us. One decision repeated enough times becomes who we are. But society loves shortcuts. We're told to 10x your life, hack your habits, or completely reinvent yourself. These messages sound exciting but create silent pressure. The feeling that if we're not transforming fast, we're doing it wrong. And so we rush. We push ourselves too hard. We burn out. Then we stop trying. Here's the truth. Lasting change never comes from a burst of motivation. It comes from patience, the kind of patience that allows imperfection. The kind that doesn't demand results tomorrow but simply asks for one honest effort today. Let me tell you a small story. A man once wanted to learn meditation. He thought he had to master it overnight, sit still for hours, empty his mind completely. But every time he tried, he got frustrated and quit. One day, his teacher told him, "Don't try to meditate for an hour. Just sit for 2 minutes. Don't fight your thoughts, just breathe." He did. 2 minutes turned into 5. 5 turned into 10. A few months later, he wasn't just meditating. He was calmer, more present, and more centered than ever. The transformation didn't happen to him. It happened through him slowly. That's the secret most people miss. Change isn't about intensity. It's about consistency. When you accept that progress can be quiet, you stop judging yourself for not moving fast enough. You begin to trust time. You begin to trust yourself. And maybe that's what real growth is. Not forcing your life into something new, but gently allowing it to evolve. Most people don't realize that the pressure to change fast often comes from comparison. We see someone online who's lost weight, started a business, or mastered a new skill, and we think, why am I not there yet? But what we don't see are the thousands of quiet days behind their success. The early mornings, the failed attempts, the invisible hours of effort that never made it into a video. It's like watching a tree and expecting it to grow in front of our eyes. You can't. Growth is happening beneath the surface. The roots are spreading, the cells are dividing, but from the outside, it looks like nothing's changing. That's what quiet transformation looks like. Invisible at first, but powerful in time. When we learn to value these invisible moments, we stop chasing dramatic change and start respecting steady growth. We stop searching for breakthroughs and start focusing on follow-through. That's where the real magic is, in the ordinary moments you repeat until they become extraordinary. Maybe your change isn't quitting your job or moving across the world. Maybe it's waking up 5 minutes earlier, drinking more water, being kinder to yourself when you fail. Maybe it's saying no when you usually say yes. Those are small steps, but they're steps forward. When you stop trying to change everything and start focusing on changing something, life becomes lighter. You feel less pressure and more purpose. You start realizing that progress doesn't need an audience. It just needs your quiet commitment, because real transformation doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't happen when people are watching. It happens when you're alone, deciding to try again after failing yesterday. That's the moment your life quietly begins to shift. So the next time you feel like nothing's happening, remember this. You are changing, just not dramatically. You're becoming more aware, more patient, more intentional. These are not small wins. They are everything. The myth of sudden change is powerful because it gives us the illusion of control. But when you let go of that myth, you discover something even more powerful. The peace of slow progress. The understanding that every step, no matter how small, counts. And as you walk this slower path, you'll begin to see that life doesn't need to be flipped upside down to be different. It only needs to be lived with quiet intention. Because real change, the kind that lasts, doesn't happen overnight. It happens every quiet morning you decide to keep going. The power of small steps. We often underestimate small steps because they don't look impressive. They feel too ordinary, too slow. We think, what difference can one small action make? But every major transformation in human history, and in your own life, began with something small. One decision, one step, one simple choice to move forward, even when the outcome wasn't guaranteed. We tend to celebrate results, but forget the process. We see the person who runs a marathon, but not the one who tied their shoes every morning. We see the author holding their book, but not the nights they wrote one page before bed. Success hides in small repetitions. It's not built in the moments that go viral. It's built in the quiet ones that go unnoticed. Psychologists call this the compounding effect, the way small, repeated actions build momentum over time. Just like money earns interest, habits earn results. 1% better each day doesn't sound like much, but over a year, it makes you almost 40 times better than when you began. The power of small steps lies not in their size, but in their consistency. Imagine trying to push a heavy car that's stuck in the mud. At first, it feels impossible. It barely moves. But if you keep pushing, inch by inch, something changes. The car begins to roll, and once it moves, it becomes easier to keep it moving. That's what small steps do. They create motion. And once you're in motion, staying in motion becomes natural. The reason small steps work is that they bypass resistance. Big goals trigger fear. They make your brain think, this is too much. I can't do it. But when you break that goal into smaller pieces, something shifts. It becomes approachable. The mind relaxes, the heart feels capable, and the journey begins. Let's take an example. Imagine you want to read more. Instead of saying, I'll read 50 books this year, start with 5 pages today. That's it. 5 pages. You'll be amazed at how often 5 becomes 10, then 20. The secret isn't reading a lot. It's simply starting. This is called the gateway habit. It's a small action that opens the door to bigger ones. You can apply it anywhere. Want to get fit? Start by putting on your workout shoes. Want to eat healthier? Start with 1 glass of water before your meal. Want to save money? Start by setting aside $1. These actions seem tiny, almost insignificant. but they send a signal to your brain. I'm the kind of person who takes care of this part of my life. Over time, that identity shift becomes stronger than any burst of motivation, and that's the real power of small steps. They build belief. Every time you follow through, no matter how small the action, you prove to yourself that you're capable of change. It's not about achieving a goal. It's about becoming the kind of person who follows through. There's a quiet pride in small progress. The pride of knowing you didn't give up even when no one was watching. The pride of keeping your promises to yourself. You don't need loud victories when your inner peace grows with each small win. You might not see the results right away, but trust that something invisible is forming beneath the surface. Just as roots grow before a tree blooms, your efforts are taking shape even when the world can't see them yet. Every repetition is a vote for your future self. Small steps also protect you from burnout. When we chase big changes too fast, we drain our energy and lose balance. But small steps create a rhythm, one you can maintain without breaking down. They fit naturally into your life, and because they're gentle, you can sustain them for years, not days. Here's something powerful to remember. Small steps multiply in the background. When you take one calm, intentional step today, it creates ripples you don't even notice. A single act of kindness can inspire another. A small moment of discipline can build confidence that spills into other parts of your life. Change is rarely visible at first, but it's always growing underneath. Maybe right now you feel stuck, like nothing's improving. But look back. The fact that you're even watching this, seeking to grow, is already a step. You're already in motion. Sometimes progress doesn't look like climbing a mountain. It looks like not giving up at the bottom. There's a Japanese concept called kaizen, which means continuous improvement through small, steady steps. It's used in business, health, and personal development, and it's one of the most effective ways to change anything. The philosophy is simple. Small actions, repeated daily, lead to big transformation. Not because they're dramatic, but because they're consistent. Small steps work because they teach you to fall in love with the process. You stop asking, when will I get there? And start realizing, I'm already moving forward. And that's when life begins to shift, not with a shout, but with a whisper. So if there's one thing to remember, it's this: small doesn't mean weak. Slow doesn't mean stuck. Every small step carries strength, discipline, and direction. It may not look like much today, but give it time, and you'll see how these tiny moments build a completely new version of you. Change doesn't always announce itself with success. Sometimes it simply whispers, keep going, building micro habits that stick. Big change doesn't happen in loud moments. It happens in quiet repetitions. It happens when you decide to take one small step, and then another, until it no longer feels like effort, but identity. Most of us dream of transformation. We want to eat healthier, read more, wake up earlier, feel calmer. But we make the same mistake. We start too big. We create plans so ambitious that they collapse under their own weight. We forget that small doesn't mean insignificant. Small means sustainable. The human brain doesn't resist change. It resists disruption. When you try to change too much, too fast, the mind panics. It seeks comfort. And comfort often means returning to old patterns. But when you introduce change quietly, through small, almost invisible habits, your brain adapts naturally. It stops seeing the new behavior as a threat and starts seeing it as normal. This is the beauty of micro-habits. A micro-habit is the smallest possible version of the action you want to sustain. It's reading one page instead of a chapter, doing one push-up instead of a full workout, writing one sentence instead of a whole page. At first, it sounds almost too simple. But simplicity is the point. Because micro-habits aren't about effort, they're about entry. Once you begin, momentum takes over. Think about it. It's easier to keep walking once you've already taken the first step. The hardest part isn't doing, it's starting. Micro habits lower that barrier so much that starting no longer feels like resistance. And here's the secret. Micro habits compound. One small change sustained over time becomes a new way of living. It's not the size of your effort that matters. It's the consistency of your rhythm. If you start meditating for 1 minute a day, you may not feel transformed tomorrow. But stay with it for a month, and something subtle happens. You begin to crave that minute. Your body associates that stillness with peace. What started as a practice becomes a pause your soul looks forward to. This is why transformation through micro habits feels quiet. There's no big reveal, no dramatic announcement. Just slow, steady alignment, until one day you realize you're no longer trying to be the kind of person who meditates. You simply are. Let's look deeper at what makes habits stick. 3 things: clarity, consistency, and compassion. Clarity means defining your habit so clearly that it doesn't require motivation. Don't say, "I'll be healthier." Say, "I'll drink 1 glass of water when I wake up." Don't say, "I'll write more." Say, "I'll open my notes app and write 1 sentence after breakfast." Clarity removes decision fatigue, and habits thrive where confusion ends. Consistency is about repetition, not intensity. It's better to do something small every day than something big once in a while, because consistency builds identity, and identity builds momentum. When you show up daily, even for a minute, you're casting votes for the kind of person you want to become. And finally, compassion, the element most people forget. Habits fail not because we lack willpower, but because we lack forgiveness. You'll miss days. You'll break routines. That's part of the process. But every time you return, every time you begin again, you reinforce the truth that growth isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. When we treat change with gentleness, it lasts longer. Harsh motivation burns fast. Gentle motivation burns steady. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine used to journal every day, pages and pages of thoughts. Then life got busy and the habit disappeared. For years, she told herself she'd start again properly when things calmed down, but they never did. One day, she decided to start small, just 1 line a night. Sometimes it was a single word. And that's how it began again, not with a plan, but with permission. 6 months later, she'd filled an entire notebook. Not because she forced herself, but because she found herself in those small, quiet pages. That's what micro habits do. They make space for self-trust to grow again. Think of your life as a garden. You don't pull on the flowers to make them grow faster. You water them daily. You trust the process. That's what habits do. They turn growth into something you nurture, not something you chase. And here's something worth remembering. Micro habits don't just change your behavior, they change your beliefs. Each small promise you keep strengthens your self-trust. You start to believe, "I can follow through." And that belief becomes the foundation for bigger transformation. Over time, the person who takes small steps builds quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't shout, but shines. You may not notice the difference week to week, but one day, you'll look back and realize the person you've become is living the life you once only imagined. That's the real secret to change. Not willpower, not massive action, just small, steady steps, taken with intention, consistency, and kindness. Because success, as we learned, is no longer about speed. It's about staying in rhythm with who you want to be, one quiet step at a time. The quiet strength of consistency. We often celebrate beginnings, the spark of motivation, the fresh start, the feeling of possibility. But real change doesn't live in beginnings. It lives in the middle, in the quiet, repetitive days where nothing seems to happen, yet everything is being built. Consistency isn't glamorous. It rarely gets applause, but it's the most powerful form of strength there is. Because consistency is proof of faith. Faith that what you're doing matters, even when results haven't shown up yet. It's believing that small steps will lead somewhere, even when you can't see the destination. Everyone loves momentum, that feeling of progress and excitement. But consistency begins where momentum ends. It's what remains when motivation fades, when the novelty disappears, when no one is watching. And that's why consistency is so sacred, because it's a quiet promise you make to yourself and keep. Think about the ocean. Each wave looks small, but over time, those quiet, rhythmic movements shape entire coastlines. That's what your effort does. Every small action, repeated over time, carves new patterns into your life. The truth is, most people underestimate the power of staying. They chase intensity, a burst of effort, a 30-day challenge, a sudden push, and then they burn out. But growth doesn't need you to be extreme. It needs you to be consistent. You don't need to move mountains every day. You just need to move a handful of stones, over and over, until the mountain moves itself. There's a kind of quiet confidence that grows in those who stay. They stop asking, "When will I get there?" and start saying, "I'm already on my way." That shift, from urgency to trust, is where peace begins. Because consistency is an act of self-respect. When you show up day after day, you're telling yourself, "I'm worth the effort," even on hard days. Even when progress feels invisible. Let's be honest, consistency often feels boring. You'll have days when the practice feels repetitive, when the routine feels pointless. But if you can learn to love that repetition, you unlock something powerful. Patience. Patience isn't passive. It's active faith, a steady belief that growth is happening even when you can't measure it. That's what separates those who transform quietly from those who burn out loudly. When you're consistent, you stop needing external validation. You start finding satisfaction in the act itself, not in the outcome. Because the truth is, there's a kind of peace that only repetition can bring. The peace of knowing you're in alignment with who you want to be. Let me share a small story. There was a man who used to walk every morning at sunrise. Rain or shine, he'd walk the same route, a slow, steady loop around the park. For years, neighbors would see him and nod politely. Some admired his discipline. Others thought he was wasting time. One day, someone finally asked him why he did it, what he was training for. He smiled and said, "I'm not training for anything. I'm training with life." That's what consistency is, not training for the future, but training with the present. It's learning to show up again and again, even when no one claps. In the beginning, consistency looks like effort. In time, it becomes rhythm, and eventually, it becomes identity. When you're consistent, you stop needing to force things. You begin to flow with them. The work becomes less about willpower and more about presence. You stop fighting your habits. You start becoming them. And here's the quiet miracle. The longer you stay, the easier it becomes to stay. Discipline turns into ease. Effort turns into energy. Because consistency builds momentum, not the loud kind that pushes, but the gentle kind that carries. This is why consistency and peace often arrive together. You begin to trust yourself again. You stop needing constant proof. You realize that you don't need to see progress every day. You just need to stay in motion. Every step matters. Every repetition counts. Even on the days when you feel stuck, The act of showing up means you're already moving forward, because life doesn't change in one grand decision. It changes in 1,000 quiet choices that no one sees. So if you ever feel like nothing is happening, remind yourself, the roots grow before the leaves appear. Growth happens underground, unseen, but never wasted. Consistency is your roots. It's what keeps you steady in storms and helps you rise in seasons of sunlight. It's not about being perfect every day. It's about choosing to begin again. Every time you forget, every time you fall, every time you doubt. And maybe the most beautiful part is this: you don't have to rush anymore. You don't have to chase progress or panic over results, because once you learn to trust the quiet rhythm of consistency, life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like peace. That's the quiet strength of consistency. It's not loud. It's not instant. But it's real. Because while motivation can start your journey, only consistency will finish it. Rebuilding identity. Becoming who you want to be. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you wish to become. And with time, those votes add up. We often think identity comes first, that we must feel confident before acting confident, or feel disciplined before acting disciplined. But in truth, identity doesn't precede action, it follows it. You don't become a writer by dreaming of writing. You become one by writing. One word, one page, one imperfect attempt at a time. Each repetition carves a quiet message into your mind. This is who I am now. The more you act in alignment with that message, the deeper it settles into your identity. And soon, it stops feeling like effort. It just feels like you. That's the hidden power of small steps. They don't just build habits. They rebuild identity, because behind every habit is a belief about who you are. And when your actions begin to support a new belief, your identity shifts to match it. This is why change feels so hard at first. Not because the task itself is difficult, but because your old identity is trying to hold on. You're not just learning new behaviors. You're unlearning old definitions of yourself. Maybe you've told yourself, I'm not disciplined. But each time you show up, even imperfectly, you rewrite that story. Maybe you've believed I'm not creative. But each time you create something, no matter how small, you prove otherwise. Identity change doesn't happen overnight. It happens through gentle repetition, through evidence quietly accumulated over time. Think of identity like a sculpture. At first, it's a block of marble. Each action is a small chisel mark, removing what doesn't belong, revealing what's been there all along. You don't build a new identity from scratch. You uncover it. And the beauty is, you don't need to announce it. You don't need to convince anyone that you've changed. The proof is in your daily actions, in the way you show up for yourself when no one else is watching. The most powerful identities are quiet ones, not declared, but demonstrated. Ask yourself, who am I becoming through what I do today? Not in 5 years. Not after success. Right now, in this very moment. Because who you are becoming is being shaped by the smallest decisions. How you spend your mornings. How you speak to yourself. How you respond to resistance. That's where identity grows, in the space between choice and action. There's a gentle truth most people overlook. You don't have to find yourself, you have to build yourself. Piece by piece, choice by choice, habit by habit. You are not the person you were a year ago. And you're not yet the person you're becoming. You are the bridge, the work in progress that connects both. That's the beauty of transformation. It doesn't erase who you were. It expands who you are, and every time you act with intention, even in the smallest way, you reinforce that bridge. You strengthen the connection between who you are now and who you're growing into. When you understand this, you stop chasing identity as something to achieve. Instead, you start practicing it, daily, quietly, consistently. You begin to realize that becoming isn't a future event. It's a present process. Every single day, through your choices, you are rehearsing the person you're meant to be. And here's something powerful. You don't have to wait to believe in yourself before you act. Belief grows through action. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It's a result. So when you feel unsure, don't wait for clarity. Act your way into belief. Take one small action that aligns with the version of you want to become. Because identity doesn't respond to words, it responds to evidence. And the more evidence you give it, the more real that identity becomes. Think of your actions as gentle whispers to your future self. I'm here. I'm showing up. I'm building you, one step at a time. Over time, those whispers become your voice, and that voice becomes your truth. You'll notice something beautiful happen. The gap between intention and identity begins to close. You'll stop trying to be someone and start simply being that someone. The transformation feels subtle, almost invisible, but it's everything. Because when your identity aligns with your actions, effort fades and authenticity takes its place. You no longer have to force change. You become change. That's the quiet revolution. The moment you stop chasing who you think you should be and start remembering who you already are, beneath all the noise. And it all begins, as it always has, with one small, honest action. Letting go of comparison. There's a quiet freedom that comes when you stop measuring your life against someone else's. It's the moment you realize you're not behind. You're not late. You're simply on your path. Comparison is one of the easiest traps to fall into, especially now. We live in a world where everyone's highlight reel is on display, perfectly curated, beautifully edited, always shining. And when you scroll through it, it's easy to believe that you're not doing enough, not achieving enough, not being enough. But here's the truth. Comparison blinds you to your own growth. It makes you forget that progress is not a race, it's a rhythm. The moment you compare your journey to someone else's, you disconnect from your own. You stop listening to your inner timing and start chasing someone else's clock. And the irony is, even the people you admire are probably doing the same thing. We all look at each other through a lens of almost there, never realizing that peace was never meant to be earned through comparison. Think about it. The tree doesn't rush to grow as tall as the one beside it. The river doesn't try to flow faster than the next. Nature grows in harmony, not competition, and yet humans often forget this. We measure, we compare, we strive to catch up, forgetting that there is no universal finish line. The truth is, you can't compare two timelines that were never meant to be identical. You have your own pace, your own lessons, your own seasons. Some people bloom early, others bloom quietly later, but both bloom beautifully. Comparison steals your joy because it convinces you that your life is lacking. But your life isn't lacking. It's unfolding. And sometimes unfolding takes time. Here's a gentle reminder. What if the pace you're going at is not a sign of delay, but divine timing? What if everything is happening exactly as it should, quietly, patiently, without needing to be seen? The more you compare, the less you notice what's already growing within you. You miss your small wins because you're too busy counting someone else's. You lose your rhythm trying to dance to another person's song, and that's what comparison does. It distracts you from your own music, But letting go of comparison doesn't mean you stop admiring others. It means you learn to admire without envy, to be inspired without imitation. You can cheer for others without doubting yourself, because their success isn't your failure, it's proof of what's possible. Someone else's light doesn't dim yours. You are both shining, just in different directions. When you realize this, something inside you softens. The tension of not enough begins to loosen. You stop looking sideways and start looking inward, where your real progress has always been happening. And here's the quiet truth most people miss. The person you compare yourself to has their own invisible struggles. The image you see is only the surface. You don't see the doubts, the fears, the quiet nights they spent questioning their worth too. Comparison is an illusion because it's built on fragments, not the full story. That's why peace begins where comparison ends. Because when you stop comparing, you finally have space to appreciate your own journey, not the filtered version of someone else's. Let's imagine for a moment that life is like a garden. Each person's garden has its own kind of soil, its own weather, its own rhythm. Some grow roses, some grow wildflowers, some grow slowly, deeply rooted. Others bloom quickly, brightly. No two gardens are meant to look alike. And that's what makes them beautiful. So instead of asking, why isn't my garden like theirs? Ask, what's growing in mine that needs my care today? Because when you water your own soil, your focus, your habits, your growth, that's when things start to flourish. Letting go of comparison doesn't happen all at once. It's a practice, a gentle returning to your own lane, again and again. Every time you catch yourself comparing, pause, breathe. Remind yourself, this is my journey. You can't grow peacefully if you're constantly looking sideways. You can't find joy in your path if your eyes are fixed on someone else's. So start looking within, at how far you've come, at what you've survived, at the quiet progress no one else sees. Those invisible victories matter more than any visible achievement, because at the end of the day, the only person you need to be better than is who you were yesterday. That's the only comparison that leads to peace. And here's something beautiful. When you stop comparing, gratitude has room to grow. You begin to see your life not as something to fix, but as something to nurture. You stop chasing timelines and start trusting timing. You begin to move at the speed of your own soul. That's what it means to let go of comparison. It's not about becoming someone else's version of enough. It's about remembering that you already are. Learning to rest, not quit. There's a moment on every journey when you feel tired, not just physically, but deeply. In your mind, in your heart. You've been doing the work, showing up, making the changes, and yet, progress feels invisible. That's the moment most people quit. Not because they lack potential, but because they mistake exhaustion for failure. We're taught to glorify the grind, to push through every wall, to never stop. But what if sometimes stopping is the bravest thing you can do? What if rest isn't the opposite of progress, but a crucial part of it? Think about nature. Trees don't grow endlessly. They have seasons, moments of bursting life and moments of stillness. The winter doesn't mean the tree is dead. It's when it gathers strength for spring. You're the same. Your stillness doesn't mean you've lost your way. It means you're recharging for the next chapter. We rarely allow ourselves to pause because we fear losing momentum. We think resting means falling behind. But the truth is, rest restores clarity. It reminds you why you started. It brings back energy that pure discipline alone can't sustain. When you learn to rest, you give your growth permission to breathe. You stop forcing outcomes and start trusting the rhythm of your own becoming. There's a powerful distinction between quitting and pausing. Quitting comes from despair. It's when you walk away from something because it hurts too much to keep trying. Resting, however, comes from wisdom. It's when you step back because you know your energy deserves protection. Some of your greatest breakthroughs will happen not while you're pushing, but while you're pausing. That quiet moment when you take a walk, breathe deeply, and let your mind wander. That's often where new clarity begins to form. Think back to the times you almost gave up. Maybe you felt stuck in a routine, disappointed by your results, or overwhelmed by the distance between who you are and who you want to be. But the reason you're still here, listening to this, is because a small part of you chose to rest instead of quit. That's resilience. That's strength in its softest, purest form. The world doesn't reward stillness. It praises visible hustle. But real change often happens in invisible moments, in silence, solitude, reflection. It's in those pauses that we integrate everything we've learned. Without them, progress becomes performance. With them, progress becomes peace. Rest isn't always about doing nothing. Sometimes it's about doing something different. Reading a book, walking slowly, sitting in nature, cooking a meal without rushing. These moments recenter you in the present. They remind you that life isn't only about reaching goals, it's about living fully along the way. When you give yourself permission to rest, you build trust with yourself. You're telling your mind, I care about your limits. You're telling your heart, you're allowed to feel tired. That's how discipline becomes compassion, and compassion is what makes discipline last. Let me share a small story. A young artist once asked her mentor how to stay creative when she felt burnt out. The mentor smiled and said, "Stop painting for a week. Go live your life. Feel the world again." The artist was confused. Wasn't that quitting? But she followed the advice. When she came back to her canvas, her work was alive again. She hadn't lost her art. She had simply forgotten to rest long enough to remember why she loved it. Sometimes, the most productive thing you can do is rest. Because when you rest, your mind reorganizes, your heart heals, and your body rebalances. You return stronger, not because you forced yourself to keep going, but because you allowed yourself to stop. Rest teaches patience. It teaches you to honor the slower pace of growth. You stop chasing instant transformation and start appreciating the quiet consistency of small steps. And here's the paradox. When you stop rushing your journey, you actually move faster. Because now every step is intentional. Every action is fueled, not by desperation, but by calm purpose. So if you're in a season where progress feels invisible, pause. Take a breath. Let yourself rest without guilt. The world will tell you to move faster, but your soul might be asking you to slow down. Listen to that voice. It's the one that knows your true pace. Progress isn't just about how far you go. It's also about how kindly you travel. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop, rest, and whisper, "I'm not giving up. I'm just taking a breath." When you rise again, you'll rise differently, softer, wiser, stronger. Not because you never paused, but because you learned that rest is part of the rhythm of change. And remember this: rest is not a reward you earn after working hard. It's a right you have as a human being. You don't need to prove your worth by exhaustion. You are worthy even when you're still. So next time your body asks for a break, or your mind begs for silence, listen. Close your laptop. Step outside. Feel the air. Let yourself stop without shame. Because peace is not found at the end of the race. It's found in the pauses between the steps. That's where real transformation begins. Not in the noise of doing, but in the quiet courage of resting. Transforming through mindfulness. Change doesn't always begin with action. Sometimes it begins with awareness. Before you can transform your life, you have to learn how to see it. Not as you wish it were, but as it truly is. That's what mindfulness teaches us. It's not about emptying the mind or sitting in silence for hours. It's about noticing. Noticing your thoughts, your emotions, your patterns, without judgment. We live most of our days on autopilot. We wake up, scroll through our phones, chase the next task, rush through the next goal. We rarely pause long enough to ask ourselves, what am I feeling? What am I creating? Why am I doing this at all? Mindfulness invites you to slow down long enough to see the invisible forces shaping your choices. It shines a light on the small, unconscious habits that quietly guide your entire life. Imagine your mind like a river. Most of the time, the current of your thoughts pulls you along. Regrets, worries, plans, distractions. You think you're steering the flow, but really, you're being carried by it. Mindfulness is the moment you stop swimming and simply watch the river. You see the current, you see the turbulence, but you don't have to drown in it. You learn that awareness itself is freedom. When you observe your thoughts, you begin to realize you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. The calm watcher, the one who notices. That single realization changes everything. Because once you stop identifying with every passing emotion or fear, you stop reacting impulsively. You begin responding consciously. And that's where real transformation begins, in the small pause between stimulus and response. Think about how much pain comes from reacting automatically, saying something you don't mean, giving up too soon, comparing yourself without realizing it. But when you become mindful, that small pause becomes your power. You no longer get lost in every emotion. You start choosing your direction with intention. Mindfulness doesn't remove difficulty. It changes your relationship with it. When you're mindful, you still face challenges, but instead of collapsing under them, you start to witness them. You understand that pain can exist without controlling you. That discomfort is part of growth, not proof of failure. You start seeing even your negative emotions as teachers. Anger shows you where your boundaries are. Fear reveals where you still need courage. Sadness opens you to compassion. Every emotion becomes information, not an enemy. Mindfulness transforms change from something you force into something you flow with. You stop trying to control everything and start allowing life to unfold. You move from resistance to acceptance, and in that space, peace begins to grow. There's a story about a monk who was asked what he gained from meditation. He smiled and said, "Nothing. But I lost a lot. Anger, anxiety, fear. That's what mindfulness does. It doesn't add more to your life. It removes what doesn't serve you. It clears the noise so you can finally hear yourself again." In today's world, mindfulness isn't just spiritual, it's practical. It helps you make better decisions, improves focus, strengthens relationships, and softens your inner critic. It's the antidote to the constant noise of modern living. You don't need to retreat to a mountain or attend a silent retreat to live mindfully. You can start with the smallest actions. When you drink your morning coffee, actually taste it. When you talk to someone, listen fully instead of planning your next reply. When you walk outside, notice the colors, the air, the sound beneath your feet. Mindfulness is not about doing more. It's about doing what you already do, with awareness. As you become more mindful, you'll notice something subtle but profound. Life slows down, even when the world doesn't. The same 24 hours begin to feel different. The same daily tasks start to carry meaning. And this is where transformation quietly happens, when you stop rushing through your life and start actually living it. Mindfulness also teaches you to be kinder to yourself. You start to see how harshly you speak to your own mind. how often you replay mistakes or criticize your reflection. But when you're mindful, you notice those thoughts without attaching to them. You start to say, there's my inner critic again, and gently let it pass, like a cloud drifting through the sky. The more you practice awareness, the more you begin to experience your life as it is. Not through stories of not being enough, not being there yet, not being perfect, but simply, beautifully as it is right now. Mindfulness transforms your relationship with time. You stop chasing the future and start experiencing the present. You realize that this moment, this breath, is not a stepping stone to something better. It is the something better you've been chasing all along. And when you start living like that, the small steps from earlier in your journey, those tiny habits, quiet choices, gentle pauses, all start to weave together into a life that feels lighter, calmer, and more intentional. Because mindfulness doesn't change who you are. It helps you remember who you've always been. A person capable of peace, of awareness, of joy without needing a reason. So take this moment right now. Breathe in deeply. Feel your shoulders drop. Notice the air filling your lungs, the sound around you, the rhythm of your heart. That's life, happening right now. Not tomorrow, not after you've achieved your next goal, but here, in this very breath. Transformation begins when you start to pay attention, and every small moment of awareness you choose is a step toward the life you've been quietly trying to create all along. The gentle revolution. If you've come this far, you've already begun the revolution. Not the kind you see in headlines or speeches, but a quiet one. A revolution that begins inside you, because changing your life isn't always loud. It doesn't always look like quitting your job, moving across the world, or reinventing yourself overnight. Sometimes, it's as soft as waking up and deciding to be just a little more present today than you were yesterday. This is the gentle revolution. The choice to change not through pressure, but through presence. Not through guilt, but through grace. You see, the world often tells us that growth must be dramatic to matter. That success must be visible, fast, impressive. But the truth is, the deepest transformations are often invisible. They happen quietly, in your thoughts, in your patience, in the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening. The gentle revolution starts when you stop waiting for a perfect moment and start creating small ones. When you let go of the need to be extraordinary and focus instead on being consistent. Every small act of awareness, every mindful breath, every quiet choice to rest instead of quit. That's a step in the revolution. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you already are beneath the noise. Think about how far you've come. Not in miles or milestones, but in mindset. You've learned that change doesn't need to shout. It can whisper. That rest isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That progress isn't about speed. It's about alignment. And now, maybe for the first time, you see that you don't have to fight against yourself to grow. You can grow with yourself. You can walk gently and still move mountains. There's a quiet strength in people who keep showing up without needing to be seen. Who water the seed even when the soil looks dry. Who trust that one small step, repeated enough times, will eventually become a path. That's what this journey has been about all along. Not changing your life overnight, but learning how to live it more intentionally, one small, mindful step at a time. Because when you slow down, you start to notice what truly matters. The way sunlight spills through your window, the taste of your first sip of coffee, the sound of someone's laughter. These moments aren't distractions from life. They are life. And when you begin to live from that awareness, you start to see that joy isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. Peace isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. The gentle revolution is not a single act. It's a lifelong rhythm. It's the steady pulse of choosing kindness when anger feels easier, of choosing patience when impatience calls louder, of choosing to stay when leaving seems simpler. It's about learning to live with your whole heart, even when it's been broken. This revolution won't ask you to shout. It will ask you to listen, to your own breath, your own intuition, your own pace. Because the quietest part of you often knows the way forward better than the noise ever will, and maybe that's the greatest form of courage, to live gently in a world that glorifies chaos. To care deeply when it's easier to be numb. To rest when the world demands more. To keep believing that small steps still matter. Every small step you take is a statement of faith, that life can be better, that you can be different, that peace is possible. So today, don't worry about how far you have left to go. Just take one small step and take it mindfully. That's all you need to begin again. And as you keep walking, remember, your life doesn't need to be loud to be meaningful. The most beautiful changes often happen in silence, in the quiet decision to keep growing, even when no one is watching. If this message has resonated with you, if something inside you feels a little lighter, a little more hopeful, that means the revolution has already begun, because you've shifted something within you. You've remembered that you have the power to shape your life, not all at once, but slowly, softly, with love. That's the essence of this journey. That's the heart of how to quietly change your life, one small step at a time. So take this calm energy with you into your next moment. Carry it in your breathing, in your choices, in your kindness toward yourself and others. Let your life be the quiet example of what patience, awareness, and gentle courage can create. And if this message spoke to you, if it helped you slow down, breathe, and see your life a little differently, then I'd love for you to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who might need it, and leave a comment about one small step you're taking today. Because every time you share a story of gentle change, you help someone else believe it's possible for them too. The gentle revolution is already happening. Inside you, inside me, inside anyone who chooses to live with awareness and love. And if enough of us keep walking this way, quietly, patiently, together, the world will change too. Not with noise, but with peace.